Hi, and welcome to Implementing High Leverage Practices into the Virtual Classroom. My name is Emily Rutherford, and I'm an Assistant Professor of Special Education at Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls, Texas. Should you need to contact me, the best way is via email at emily.rutherford@msutexas.edu. I want to begin today by talking about high leverage practices. What they are and how are they defined? High leverage practices are defined as 22 essential special education techniques that all K-12 special education teachers should master for use across a variety of classroom contexts. These were developed by the Council for Exceptional Children and the Cedar Center. To make the practices more understandable and easier to use, since there are 22 of them, you will see HLPs organized into 4 different areas of practice, with HLPs listed under each area of practice. The first area being collaboration. Effective special education teachers collaborate and communicate with a wide range of professionals, families, and caregivers to ensure that educational programs and related services are effective in meeting the needs of each student with a disability. The second area of practice, assessment. Effective special ed teachers understand the strengths and needs of their students, are knowledgeable about assessment, and are skilled in using and interpreting data. The third area of practice, social, emotional, and behavioral. Effective special education teachers establish a consistent, organized learning environment to support student success and well-being. And the final area of practice is instruction. Effective special education teachers are well-versed in general education curricula and other contextually relevant curricula. They also use appropriate standards, learning progressions, and evidence-based practices in conjunction with specific individual education program goals and benchmarks to prioritize long and short-term learning goals and to plan and deliver instruction. Our goal today is to not talk about all 22 of those high leverage practices, but to identify a few key options or a few key practices worth considering for your online learning. We'll also discuss the advantages and limitations of some of these practices. The process. Next, we will detail a few of these practices that may have the highest impact on learning. These practices come under design, planning, and implementation. For design, we're going to talk about how to elicit prior knowledge and synthesize learning online. What you may find is that many of these practices are very similar to face-to-face learning. We just need to keep in mind that we can do some of the same things with a few tweaks here and there to make online learning efficient for all students. Eliciting prior knowledge. Research on how people learn has pointed out the importance of building on prior knowledge. Getting students to share that knowledge can be tricky, especially online. So you want to make sure you're not asking leading questions when you're trying to tap into that prior knowledge. You don't assign a grade. Students are more likely to share what they know when they know they're not being graded. Also, make sure that you list responses and review it at the end of the unit to show students where they have achieved growth. Synthesizing learning. Often students of all ages miss the point of a lesson unless they're offered the opportunity to synthesize or reflect on learning. Doing this online can be tricky, but it's very important to student learning. So the key concepts for synthesizing learning is that you understand that it's essential to your design of your instruction. Make sure you create records for future use. That way you're not recreating the reel every time. Be clear about why it's important for students, and this will give you buy-in from your students. Also, make sure you're working towards student independence so they can eventually do this on their own. Planning, we'll discuss conveying content and sharing student work. Conveying content, online or in person, it's important to do in an appropriate manner. Content should be short and presented at an appropriate level for students. Use a variety of media to make sure that you're reaching all students. Make sure your media is of good quality. When you can, give them a choice between one method of learning and another. And ask students, what are you doing with this content that you're learning online? That will give them some buy-in and ownership of their own learning. Sharing student work. Students can always learn from each other, even online. So what we have to do as teachers is to create expectations for sharing student work and discuss these expectations with students prior. We need to be mindful of what we're asking students to do with their work, with others' work. And when students have errors, use this as a learning opportunity for your entire class. Sharing others' work is time consuming, so make sure that you're using this sparingly and you're using it when it counts the most. Implementation. We'll discuss giving directions for independent work and giving feedback. Students cannot be expected to work independently unless they know and understand what you expect them to do. This can be challenging online because you're not always available to answer their questions. So you want to make sure you provide written directions so students can revisit them as needed. If possible, give directions both orally and in writing to meet different learning preferences. Provide samples of the completed assignment for students to use as long as it doesn't give away too much information. And also make sure your students know they can ask for clarification. Finally, giving feedback. Learning is enhanced when students are given feedback in a timely manner. Make sure you create an environment where students are comfortable with your feedback. Word negative feedback in a way that doesn't discourage your students. You may sandwich it between two positive feedbacks. Feedback should be timely and relevant, and if possible, allow students to correct their assignment using your feedback before you assign a grade. Resources that I used for this and that I recommend for others are the Irish Center, Cedar Center, Council for Exceptional Children, and definitely the Center for Learning in the Digital Age. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at emily.rutherford@msutexas.edu.